Hello, gardening friends. Today is Saturday morning, September 3rd. Happy Labor Day weekend. And I thought I would just start here in the front porch. It's been a while since I took a video in here. As you can see, my anthurium is still in bloom. If you go back to my first video that I posted, it was like in February and it was blooming then. So that anthurium has pretty much stayed in bloom for like the last 3 or 4 years. This is my front porch. Originally, I used to grow orchids here. Oh, my clocks are about ready to go off. But through the years, I got away from orchids and started planting other things. My latest acquisition is this night blooming cereus. I actually have 2 plants in there. The long pendulous one is white, and the other one that I stuck in the pot basically to give it some balance, because with just the one hanging over like that, the pot kept tipping on its side. So the other one is a red one, and it blooms only at night for one night. So I figured the chances of a red and a white one blooming at the same time are minimal. And again, it's called a night blooming cereus. Not to be confused with Sirius Radio. You can Google each if you'd like. Although I have read something this week which kind of surprised me, and that is that Tel Aviv University has done research on plants. And I'll tell you now, if you are a vegetarian, you may want to fast forward through this part. But they've done research on plants, specifically tomatoes and tobacco, and they have found that those plants actually emit ultrasonic sounds when stressed. If you cut a tomato off of the plant, it produced a sound. If the plants were under stress in terms of needing water, they emitted a number of sounds during the day. It's kind of interesting. So cabbages may scream as they're plucked out of the ground. We just can't hear them. These begonias on either side of the door are cuttings of the one that I have in the backyard. And they've done well. I didn't put them out this year. I just left them inside for a change. There's Miss Mimi's little water fountain. She's under the bed in my den, relaxing. She had a late night of playing with her mouse. Tired her out. It finally dried out enough to be able to go ahead and get the lawn mowed. You can see my pelargoniums are still doing nicely. I'm going to leave these stalks on my lilies of the Nile because they provide some interest, but if they turn brown, I'll go ahead and cut them off. You can see all in through here, this lower border is gardenias. I need to come and trim this loropetalum again. I trimmed it once this year, which only seemed to make it mad, and then it sprouted up more. So I'll need to go ahead and trim it again. This area of the garden, my little camellia garden, is progressing nicely. Not much has happened since last we were here, but I still have a few of the encore azaleas blooming. Not a huge amount of bloom, but Considering it's September 3rd, it's not bad. Camellias need a little touch-up here and there, where there's a sprig coming out, but there's no rush to do that. This palm is a needle palm seedling. It came from my backyard, and it's been moved 3 times over here until it finally got in that spot, and it seems to be doing nicely. I got a new handicap sticker from my car. And new license plates. This is the year for new license plates. This cassia is doing really well. This plant I planted this year, and it's grown about a good foot or so. It should turn into yellow flowers shortly. This is a magnolia little gem. It leans to one side because I used to have a loquat in the corner, and it died a couple of years ago. Loquats are these big trees here. Oh, I wanted to give you a close-up. Loquats bloom in the fall, and here, if I can reach it, yep, is the beginnings of a Loquat Blossom. They'll bloom in probably another month. They have little strawberry-like blossoms. Very fragrant. It'll smell up the whole yard. Banana trees are still growing. This one potentially could have fruit, but it doesn't look as though it's going to. The female cycad has still got its huge flower, and the pods from last year are at the bottom. I cleaned up this flower bed this week. The Spiderwort was taking over. I'll probably plant something else there shortly. Tomatoes this year were a miserable failure. I have one okra coming up over here. But the spent $10, $5 a piece for these tomatoes from Lowe's, and they've produced a total of 3 tomatoes this year. Really wasn't worth the effort. And my green beans have produced. They've produced nicely. I just this last week made a string bean casserole with my fresh string beans, and it really came out delicious. I have never made it with fresh string beans before. About ready to get rid of these string beans, but in light of hearing about the research at Tel Aviv University, I'm a little reluctant to yank these out until they're totally dead. No sense in making them suffer needlessly. This side of the garden I haven't done much to just yet. You can see how that spiderwort has really taken over. It's kind of a thug, but it's easy to control. This female cycad is a little shorter, so it's a little easier to see what the center looks like. My Kimberly fern has spread, and I actually took cuttings of it during all the rains we've had and planted them along the left-hand side of the sidewalk, and they've caught. I did learn one thing this week. I had read about it. This is an Australian tree fern that I planted this year, and the bottom of it is starting to form a trunk, and I had read that some people are allergic to it. Well, I found out I was one of those people. I was in there weeding, and normally I guess it's not a big deal. You brush against it, you don't think about it. But because there were so many weeds at the base of it, I held it back with my arm and leg and didn't really break out into a rash, but itched and itched and itched for 2 or 3 days afterwards. It has little stiff hairs all up and down the fronds of it, but it appears to like this spot. We'll see if it survives the winter. Here you can see the Kimberly Ferns. You can see it's got new shoots on it. I just planted those about 2 weeks ago. This Nandina, by the way, I figured I'd give it some credit while we're here, is the mother Nandina of all the Nandinas on this property. It was here when I bought the house. You can see how it's got young shoots all at the bottom. That Nandina gave birth to these Nandinas, these Nandinas, and all of the Nandinas in my backyard. You can see my neighbor's crepe myrtle is the same as my big crepe myrtle. My flowers aren't that thick this year on my crepe myrtle, but they're a beautiful pink color. I call it watermelon pink. These topiaries are doing fine. This one did well from last year. This one I had to start over again, and it's catching little by little. It's growing. And we're going to take a little sneak peek over the fence. I don't know if you can see at the end of my neighbor's deck, but she has pink angel's trumpets in bloom. Don't tell her we did that. Okay. And here's my angel's trumpet. It's got some flower buds. No, those are just leaves. I don't see any buds yet. This one is going to be a peach or yellow colored when it blooms. Oh, I forgot about these. My spider lilies are in bloom. They're an old southern plant. I've got probably about 50 or 60 of them back here. And they keep coming back. In the spring, they send up leaves. And this time of the year, all that they send up is a flower stalk. If you look carefully, there's no leaves around that flower stalk. And I think I may have found out why I don't have that many blooming, because they apparently attract weed whackers. When I go to weed whack around the gardens, they can be confused for smilax, which is a weed. So just have to remember where I planted my spider lilies so I don't weed whack them out. Mexican heather's doing fine over here. For a fall garden, it's about all you can expect. It's green. I did have one pear that came off the tree. Haven't eaten it yet. I actually have my cushions out today. Figured since it's Labor Day, I'd go ahead and celebrate a little bit by having some cushions out and turning the fountains on. I really don't enjoy the garden as much as I should. I try to enjoy it. The problem this time of the year are mosquitoes. I really enjoy it in the fall when you can sit out and not get bit up by things. Here you can see the azaleas doing really well. I may go ahead and the butterfly bushes I have on the other side of this garden did not do well, don't do well because they're too shady. And I may just throw in the towel on those and plant some more of these autumn carnation azaleas. But I'll be careful digging them up and give them to somebody. so they won't scream too much. This garden needs to be worked over a little bit. You can see the vines have kind of taken over. But there's always more work to do in a garden. It's never done. Just have to learn to enjoy it and not see the stuff that needs doing. There's some nice yellow daisies doing nicely. It's nice to sit in the shade. It's definitely a couple of degrees cooler up in here. And I don't know if you can see, I'm going to actually make my way back there today if I don't fall head over heels over this bench. But the Snowball Viburnum has really put out. And I'm not going to bother pruning it back. I want it to grow up tall and fill in that corner. And so hopefully we'll have those big snowballs earlier in the year, the first thing to bloom in the spring. They do have a fragrance, and some of them have berries. I don't know if this one has a berry, if this one has berries or not, because, you know, it's not been big enough. Okay. Oh, I think I'll show you how these ferns spread. You may remember the Kimberly fern from the front yard. Well, I planted one back here last year, and it has come through the monkey grass, which is saying a lot because that monkey grass is like iron. It has a very rigid support. It's even come out on the side. So I don't know what Kimberly fern does, but it spreads rapidly. And of course it is, these hanging pots are Kimberly ferns. So they're, you know, one of the common ferns that you buy. Let's see. Oh, the one other thing we did this week was we trimmed the palms. There were some dead on the palms, and this particular palm, the jelly palm, was up on my roof, and I didn't want it rubbing my shingles, causing damage. So we took some big branches off of it. And unfortunately, there's always a little catch somewhere. You can't see it. But one of the branches whipped down as it fell and lopped all the leaves off of my little seedling Fatsahedra. However, it didn't kill it. You really can't see it from here, but trust me, there used to be leaves at the bottom there. They just knocked the leaves off and they'll come back. The white angel's trumpet, Brugmansia, is getting new blossoms here at the top. I can't really tell if you can see where the new blossoms are. There, oh yes, right in the center of the picture. It seems hard to believe that that plant, which is now way up over my head, was frozen last winter, or froze last winter, and was cut down to the ground. And that's how much it grows in 1 year, and there's still another couple months for it. It's going to keep growing and blooming until cold weather comes and nips it. So it's got a lot of life left in it. My little fountain is going over here in the corner. It always makes a nice sound. I don't know why this year, but my hydrangeas have just gotten very lush. I did acidify them this year and fertilize them. I guess that's the wrong thing to do because I only had one blossom. So, and I didn't prune them, so go figure, live and learn. You're never too old to learn something new. I think next year I won't fertilize them and see what happens. Good news on this plant here is it's got some new shoots at the bottom, which means it caught. I'm slowly giving it some place to grow. It should send out large yellow flower spikes soon. I don't see any forming yet. Ligularia is the name of that. Here's another spider lily. They're very, you don't see them sold very much because they're an old-fashioned plant And people nowadays don't really have the patience for them, because once when you plant them, it may take 4 or 5 years for them to establish before they actually start to bloom. And if you have a fast turnaround on your houses, you may not ever see it bloom, but whoever buys your home after you sell it will. Surprisingly, this loropetalum has set out flowers. I cut it back drastically a couple of weeks ago to give it some shape. Plumeria, plenty of green leaves. You can see it's got quite a lot of new growth at the very base of it. It does lose its leaves, though. I don't know. I'm going to keep it. I was debating, since it didn't bloom for the last 3 years, that I might get rid of it, but it is a nice plant when it's green, so we'll let it stay. It may just be a little tired. My pitcher plant, Nepenthes, is doing nicely. I have a little seedling plant in there that I need to dig out. Strawberry Begonia. I had a big strawberry Begonia here, and actually it was in that pot. And I was looking for a pot to put the Nepenthes in because I wanted it to hang. So I took the Begonia out of the pot and divided it up, gave some of it away, threw some of it out, kept one pot, and it did really nicely outside, and I brought it in my front porch, and apparently I brought in some kind of a worm with it, because I noticed that the leaves seemed to be eaten, and eventually by the time I found the worm, pretty much all the leaves were gone. So I set it outside here, and it did eventually leaf out again, but it's not doing really well. These are doing nicely. These are the species Amaryllis that bloomed earlier this year, and I have a video on them. But they're starting to sprout out. The little ones on the side have been green. These are just starting to come out again. So I may get some flowers on that again this year. This is a clivia that I bought from Walmart. Actually, all 3 of those I got from Walmart different years. And this was a pitiful seedling when I got it. And I'm actually, this year I bought it, it's actually got 2 little pups on the side, so I'm tickled. May take a while to get it to bloom, but it's in the Amaryllis family. You can Google it. It's called Clivia, or Clivia, C-L-I-V-I-A. That one's going to have yellow flowers. More Kimberly Fern. Ginger's still here. I cleaned this plant up. My other pitcher plant, the Sarracenia, and it's doing fine. Let's see what else. Caladium's got a little too much water, if you believe that, with all the rains that we've been having, so they don't look the best. That pot is still performing nicely. And you can see God has a sense of humor, because if you look at the top of that hedge, I just clipped it about 2 weeks ago. And with all the rains we've got, you can see the new growth. So I'll have to just clip that back probably one more time. This time of the year, you shouldn't have to clip more than once. Roses are still doing okay. You can see that one's kind of burned, but I left it I figured I'd stop cutting them and just let them do their own thing now for a couple of months. These chrysanthemums are probably not long for this world, because I went to Lowe's yesterday and they have beautiful new chrysanthemums out there. Although this one looks nice, that one looks pitiful, so I may get 2 new chrysanthemums to fill those pots. Banana trees, I still keep cutting the dead leaves off. There's one I have to get. I now have to tape I use my good bread knife serrated edge, and I duct tape it to a stick, and then use it like a saw to get at the high up leaves of the banana. But the bananas have just done really well. So far, so good. I don't like them to get that big. The main reason is at the side of this deck, there's a water line that runs, two water lines, a hot and cold water that runs to my garage where I have a washing machine. And those bananas are right on top of the water lines. So far, my water bill hasn't gone up, but the weight of those is probably, these tall ones are probably a couple 100 pounds each. So you're looking at probably 2, 4, 6, you're probably looking at 800 to 1,000 pounds altogether on top of my water line, which is not a good thing, as Martha Stewart would say. But that's about it for this first of the Labor Day weekend. I'm looking forward to just sitting outside and doing a little bit of reading. I was going to say let's go and see what time it is, but the sun has come out, or has gone in, I should say. I don't think it's going to work. But my sundial, yeah, it's not sunny enough. My sundial actually does tell the time and the shadow from this central thing usually falls somewhere on that inner circle, and it actually does tell pretty good time. Of course, full disclosure, you do have to twist the base when we switch to daylight savings time, but it keeps pretty good time for about 3/4 of the day. And since I'm retired, I don't need to keep pretty good time for any reason at all, and so it fits my needs really well. I guess I'll do a close-up of the ginger lily still blooming, butterfly ginger, very fragrant. And that's about it for today. So I hope you enjoyed the little walking tour. Have a good day. Till next time. Bye-bye.